Hey guys, it's Daniel, licensed therapist. Did you know Arnold was an amazing motivational speaker? Dude, this guy is incredible. Is there anything he can't do? Bodybuilding, check. Acting, check. Politics, check. Family? Well, we'll give him half a check there. And apparently, motivational speaking and advice on achieving your dreams, big fat check. I came across his motivational speeches whilst perusing YouTube, and it aligns a lot with what I do with my clients as a therapist. My clients have goals just like all of us, and my role is to identify those psychological barriers and just demolish them. Smash right through them. It's so easy. But let's take a look at Arnold's advice and see if it's any good. Spoiler alert, he's the governor, so of course it's going to be good. Let's get into it.
Never ever think small. If you're going to accomplish anything, you have to think big. You have to go and shoot for the stars. The biggest challenge most people have is because they think small. And the reason why people think small and why they choose small little goals is because they're afraid to fail. They know that if you shoot for a big goal, then the chances of failing are very high. And they're afraid of failing. It's one of the most common things why people are frozen and why they can't make a move in life, because they're scared of failing.
Don't think small. I agree, but that's a personal thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with living a simple life, and I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to become a leading man in Hollywood. The humanists say that we're all like a block of wood and we all have a particular grain, and our mission as therapists is to help the client discover the grain and help them live accordingly. That being said, there are a lot of people out there who want to achieve more, and Arnold's encouragement to shoot for the stars rings true. I know it does for me, and he identifies the fear of failure as one of the most common things that holds people back. And I agree, it is one of the most common things that holds people back, and it is always accompanied and ultimately caused by something else. Let's see if Arnold can identify it.
I say to myself, hey, I'm not worried about failing because that's part of life. You're not gonna go and win everything. And how far can you fall? Look at this is the ground. That's as far as I can fall. And you know something? That the only time you really consider the failure is if you fall and you don't get up. But if you get up, you never consider the failure. So I never considered myself a failure. I always considered myself a winner, even though I fell every so often. But I always got up and I always moved forward. This is the important thing.
Boom. Nailed it on the head. It's all about perspective. People are so often afraid of failure because of the meaning they put on failure. But it doesn't have to be such a bad thing. And you can see how Arnold here frames failure as something normal. It's something that everybody goes through and that it's okay. And the one thing that's not okay, and I agree with Arnold here, is how you respond to failure. It's not okay to let failure define you. My personal view of failure is that it's life's great teacher. We grow when we fail, and so we should be thankful for our failures. We should look back at our failures and we should respond with joy and gratitude. We should go out there and not necessarily look to fail, but we should push ourselves to the point of failure so that we can grow. And that way we know we're not just playing it safe. But all of this has to be held up by the belief in yourself. You have to see yourself as not a failure. You have to see yourself just like Arnold said. He never saw himself as a failure or a loser, so he's able to have this type of framing and mindset. If there's any part of us that sees ourselves as a failure or a loser, we have to get rid of it, because if we don't, we're always going to be afraid that it's true. So if we don't believe we're a failure at all, we can just go out there and failure and it's not a big deal. Let's keep going.
I never had any patience, of course, for thinking small. If you do something, then go all out and do it well. And this was not just the case in bodybuilding. I didn't just want to be a bodybuilding champion. I wanted to be the greatest bodybuilder of all times. I wanted to have the most muscle, the most muscle of all times, the most definition. I wanted to win the most trophies, the most world championship titles. I just wanted to be the best. And the same is also in movies. I didn't just think about being in movies. No, I wanted to be a movie star. I wanted to have above the title billing. I wanted to become the highest paid entertainer. I basically wanted to be another John Wayne. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that, Arnold. Absolutely nothing wrong. If you want to go for that, I think you should. However, like I talked about us all being wood blocks, I don't think all of us are designed to be like that. I certainly don't want to be Mr. Olympian like Arnold, and I don't want to be a leading man like John Wayne. That type of mentality, I would say, is extreme because there's only a handful of Arnolds and John Waynes in the world. And in order to have that kind of mentality and achieve that kind of success, you're going to have to pay a price. And if you want to pay that price, I'm all for it. I'm rooting for you and I want you to get there. But I think too often people shoot for something, they pay the price, they don't think about it until they've gotten there and they look back and they regret. So what I do with my clients is we process. We think about everything. We think about the price you have to pay in order to get that success. We think about the life that you're going to live when you get there. We think about what you're going to do in 20 years and what that life is going to look like. And we think about ultimately, what is it you really want? And so that's what I encourage you to do. Think about what you really want. And if you still want it, go for it. But I do think you're going to have to adopt a lot of what Arnold is saying here.
Wherever I go, people ask me all the time, what is the secret to success? I think I can give you the long version here. And the long version is that I actually always had 5 rules. And everything that I did, I always used those 5 rules. And those 5 rules helped me to become successful in various different areas. And I believe that those rules can be applied to almost anyone and everyone. You don't need to be a bodybuilding champion. You don't need to want to be a governor of California or to be an action hero or anything like that. If you want to excel in whatever you do, those rules are for you. It's that simple. I think that we all here like to be successful and we are driven. So that's why those rules apply to you. So my first rule is find your vision and follow it. You see, I think it's the most important thing that we have a very clear vision of where we go. A goal, where do we go? Because you can have the best ship in the world. You can have the best cruise liner, but if the captain does not know where to go, that ship will drift around the world and out there at sea and will never end up anywhere. And this is exactly the way it is in real life. If you don't have a goal, if you don't have a vision, you just drift around. And you're not going to be happy. This is why it is so important to have that vision.
Oh man, I agree that vision is so important. But I believe there's a big difference between vision and dreaming. It's easy to dream. It's easy to say that you want to be the biggest movie star in the world. But vision requires you to believe that it can happen and to see a path to achieve that dream. And our beliefs generate our everyday thoughts, and in turn, that creates how we feel, which ultimately leads us to act. And if we don't really believe that we can achieve something, then you will see it in our actions. I'm pretty sure you know someone like that. They say they want to be a real estate agent, but they aren't studying for the exam. They're not going out there to meet other agents or investors. They aren't studying the market and the economy, and they aren't knocking on doors or making cold calls. It's just a pipe dream, and their actions show what they really believe. They're just saying it and they don't believe it. So vision is important, but it has to be coupled with belief, or else we're just dreaming. Let's see what Arnold has to say about his story and how all of this applies to that.
Now, I created that vision in Austria because I grew up after the Second World War. The problem was that everyone was so depressed because they lost the war that there was alcoholism everywhere. There was, of course, depression. There was a terrible economic situation. There was famine. There was starvation and all of those things. And also it was kind of a little place and narrow. I felt I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to escape. And I couldn't see myself really to work there and to stay there, to work in a factory or to work on a farm, or to even to follow my father's footsteps and to become a police officer. I couldn't see that either. As a matter of fact, that's what my parents wanted me to do. But that's not what I saw. This was the vision of my parents, but not mine. And luckily, one day in school, I watched a documentary about America. And I found myself, I knew exactly that is where I wanted to end up. I wanted to be in America. Everything that I saw in the documentary, I just loved. Everything was so big. I remember the tall skyscrapers, the monstrous bridges, the giant freeways filled with beautiful cars, the huge jetliners, movie stars, Muscle Beach, and all of those things. I could not wait to get there. The question was just, how do I get there? How do I get to America? I mean, this was not a common thing to do way back in the 50s. No one had the money to travel or anything.
So right now in Arnold's story, two very powerful things were working against him: his circumstances and his parents. Those two things were psychologically pulling him to stay. So we really have to give it up to Arnold and have some respect for his internal strength to make that kind of decision. Those are some pretty powerful forces. So to go against that, what your parents say and what you see with your own eyes, it's pretty extraordinary. And I feel that it's what makes Arnold's story so inspiring. But I do believe there's something missing, and he talks about it in this next clip.
But one day I was fortunate enough to see a magazine, and that magazine showed me the path to America. And it was a bodybuilding magazine. And on the cover was this very muscular guy that was standing there like Hercules with a Hercules outfit. His name was Reg Park. This Reg Park was on that cover, and I remember the cover said, "Mr. Universe becomes Hercules star." I read the article as fast as I could, learning about how he grew up in Leeds in England, poor, and how he trained 5 hours a day, every single day, and trained and trained and trained and lifted weights, and then he finally became Mr. Great Britain. And then he became Mr. Universe. And then he won a second Mr. Universe title and a third Mr. Universe title, and then all of a sudden he landed in Rome in Cinecittà doing Hercules movies. And there he made millions of dollars, and this money he took and bought himself a gymnasium chain in South Africa, and he became a successful gymnasium owner. And as I read, I became more and more certain about my own future. As I read this story, I was so excited, so interested. I knew exactly that I wanted to become another Reg Park. I know he laid out the blueprint for my life, basically. I could see myself, I could visualize myself clearly to be a champion on that same stage where he won the Mr. Universe, and then to move to America, then get into movies, and then become rich and famous. I had that vision very clearly laid out.
This is what's missing: evidence. It's extremely difficult to believe something if there's no evidence for it. I believe that if Arnold didn't watch that documentary on Reg Park, he wouldn't have become the Arnold we see today. But what did that documentary really do for Arnold? It gave him a story. It gave him a narrative. It gave him an understanding of who he was and how someone like him was able to make it to his goal. It connected the dot from the beginning to the end. And from that day on, he was a Reg Park type of person. Before that, he was just another Austrian surrounded by poverty and desperation. Who we are in our story of life determines everything. And that's why it's so important for us to control our narratives. We're not a loser who can't make it. We're not the failure who's going to be humiliated for trying. We are that guy or girl who's never going to give up and stays determined in the face of adversity. When we do face that failure, we're just in the middle of our story. So this was a great demonstration of evidence and narratives and how they can work to create a mindset that defies the odds.
I was so happy that I knew exactly where I was going. From that moment on, everything that I did, no matter how hard I had to work or how much I had to struggle, it didn't matter. It was a wonderful joyride because I knew what the purpose was and I found my passion. The simple truth is, if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a goal, if you don't see your future laid out in front of you, you're just floating around without a purpose. And I think that the numbers speak for themselves. This is why so many people around the world are unhappy with their jobs. I mean, in America, 74% of the people hate their job and would like to change jobs. But think about that. That means that only a quarter of the Americans love their life's work. I mean, that is a very depressing statistic. I always smiled when I worked, no matter how hard I worked. I always had a great time, no matter what I did. It didn't matter if it was in bodybuilding, or if it was in the movies, or if it was as governor. I remember in the pumping iron days, people ask me in the gym all the time, why are you smiling all the time? Why are you so happy? You have to lift 50 tons of weights. You have to train 5 hours a day. I mean, I look at the other bodybuilders' faces and lifters' faces, and they look kind of depressing. They look sour. They're miserable that they have to lift weights. You don't look miserable, you look happy. And I tell them always, I say, I smile because I know exactly that every rep that I do, that every set that I do, every weight that I lift, I get one step closer to turning that vision of mine into reality and becoming that Mr. Universe. I could not wait to lift another 500 pounds in the squats. I could not wait to do another 1,000 sit-ups. I could not wait to do bench press and more curls until I couldn't move my arms anymore. Because I knew that every rep got me closer to standing on that stage as a champion. As a matter of fact, when I lifted weights, I didn't really feel like I was lifting weights. I felt like I was lifting a trophy over my head each time I lifted. And to have all those bodybuilders around me and thousands of people screaming.
That man deserves applause. This is the power of framing. He was doing the exact same thing as everybody else around him. He was lifting weights, they were lifting weights, and very practically speaking, they were just experiencing a whole lot of pain. But look at the power of your mind. You can take pain and turn it into something enjoyable. You can take suffering and you can reframe that into a moment of glory, like raising a trophy. This is exactly what he said earlier about fear of failure. He reframed failure as normal. It's not such a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing because it's him reaching for the stars. He is having a great time because he, again, framed something negative into a positive. He is smiling doing something pretty miserable. I thought this was amazing and beautiful how he was able to do that, and I think we should all learn from that.
And I tell you that this vision didn't just help me in bodybuilding, it helped me with everything, like I said. I remember in the movie business, there was many times stunts that I had to do where I got hurt, where I was in pain, in agony, and had to do it over and over again. I remember one incident specifically on Conan the Barbarian. There I was crawling on all four, on rocks, over rocks and gravel, holding my sword right in front of me. And as I was crawling, the camera followed me, and it was around 30 feet that crawl on those rocks and this gravel. And eventually, after 10 takes, my elbows, my knees started bleeding and hurting. And the director came to me sheepishly and said to me, he says, do you mind if we do another take? I need a close-up of you. And I said to him, no, I don't mind at all. I said, go and do as many takes as you want. He says, no, I don't want to do that because I know you're in pain, you're bleeding. I said, no, I don't feel any pain. I said, the only thing I see is the finished scene. This is why I did not feel that pain. I did not care if I was bleeding on my knees because I know that pain is temporary, but the film is permanent. And I explained that to the director, so this is why I try to tell you, always discover your vision, and the rest will follow.
Bravo, Arnold, standing ovation. Man, I'm ready to lift some weights, eat a steak, and take on the world. But let's get personal. Why do I make these videos in the first place? I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't tell anybody to like or subscribe because honestly, I don't care. I just know and understand how amazing human beings are. I sit with people for hours each day and I hear them talk about the things that they can't do or the ways in which they're held back, and I see them cry and emotionally break from fear and pain. And I watch them change and grow and become strong and overcome the most insurmountable things, and they never thought that they would overcome them. My vast experiences with people have shown me the fearsome ability of each human being out there, but the world tells you you can't do it. Something in you tells you you can't do it. You're not smart enough. You're not talented enough. You're not good looking enough, charismatic enough. You're just not good enough. Well, I've seen people set free of that voice. And when people believe that they are enough, I'm telling you, we get Arnolds. So you, yes, I'm talking to you. Whatever you think your limit is, I'm guessing that's just the beginning of your ability. So please believe in yourself, find and craft that narrative, and reframe pain and failure, and just go for it. Thanks for watching, you amazing person. I'll see you next time.